Hell yeah! Last episode of Dracula! Lots happening in the world again. Man, we have been we left off on chapter 17, and this book sucks. It sucks. 17, and there's this many pages left, and I don't want to do it. But lucky for me, lucky for you, we don't have to. Boys got the cliff notes. We're gonna knock out the rest of Dracula right now in, let's see, start at chapter 17. Well, it's 18. We'll start with 18. Which, you know what? That's page 47. This is chapter 17. And then this goes, these are just references in the back. Oh, shit. 13 pages, dog! We're gonna finish this book in 13 pages. Are you excited? Because I am. Oh, man, just in time for Halloween. Get done with this bullshit. Hey, let's do it. I hope you're well. Go vote. Support NEVE Association, National Pin and Venue Association. Support just if you got spare cash, throw it around. The world needs it. And anyway, let's crank this shit out. I'm excited. Here we go. So, chapter 17 and 19. We're knocking out 3, right, in like 2 pages. I'll read the commentary. We got that kind of time. Summary of chapter 17 through 19. Dr. Seward's diary continues sometime later. There's always sometime later. That's how time works. And he details for us his first meeting with Mina Harker. Mina, he says, will travel with Seward to Seward's asylum, where she will stay as a guest. In her journal, Mina details... Oh, we don't have to read their journal. We don't have to read about the color of cheeks or lips or Van Helsing's blatherings. In her journal, Mina details the discussion which she and Seward had concerning Lucy's death. Mina agrees to type out Seward's diary, which has heretofore been kept on a phonograph. Seward is horror-struck that Mina may discover the true natures of Lucy's death. It was gnarly. But Mina, through her persistence, convinces Seward to allow her to listen to the phonograph cylinders. Later, both Seward and Mina expressed their dismay at the stories which they had read in each other's respective diaries. The next day, September 30th, Jonathan arrives, and Seward expresses his admiration for Jonathan's courage. For the first time, Seward realizes that Count Dracula might be next door at the estate at Carfax. That's right. Dracula lives at Carfax with that weird fucking fox. Count Dracula and the Carfax fox. What a team. Seward concludes his diary noting that Renfield has been calm for several days. He's the nutso. Seward assumes that Renfield's outbreak was due to Dracula's proximity. Good call, buddy. Jonathan Harker discovers from his journal to Whitby that the 50 cases of common earth which arrived on Dracula's ship have been sent to the old chapel at Carfax. Well, Jonathan assumes that all 50 cases are still at Carfax. We later learn that Count Dracula has had them sent to various locations in and around London. Uh-oh, my man is setting up little Airbnbs, little dirt B&Bs for himself. Mina is both pleased and inspired by the resolute, determined energy which she now sees in Jonathan. He now seems cured of his illness, full of life and hope and determination. Later, on the 30th, Arthur Holmwood, now referred to as Lord Godalming, I do not care to reference the original text to find out why, and Quincy Morris arrive. Lord Godalming is still physically shaken by the deaths of his father, Ms. Westenra, and Lucy. Unable to restrain himself any longer, he breaks down and cries like a baby on Mina's breast. In chapter 18, already moving, banging through it. Dr. Seward notes that Mina Harker wishes to see Renfield. He takes her to Renfield's room, and Renfield curiously asks them to wait until he tidies things up. His method of tidying was peculiar. He simply swallowed all the flies and spiders in the boxes. I'll miss that. Renfield is extremely polite to Mina, and he seems to respond the most sane way to her inquiries. Van Helsing arrives and is pleased to discover that all the records, diaries, journals, etc. are in order, and that all those intimate with the Count, are now to be presented with the facts surrounding the case. Mina Harker, in her journal, September 30th, recalls in detail many of the things known about vampires, a subject which prior to this time she has been ignorant of. Van Helsing presents many conclusions about the Nosferatu, or the undead. 1. They do not die. This probably would have been a good chapter, but fuck it, we're finishing this thing today. 1. They do not die. 2. Can be strong as 20 men. But how strong are them? You know, there's weak men in 20. 3. Can direct the elements, storms, fog, thunder. 4. Can command the rat, the owl, the bat, the wolf, the fox, and the dog. 5. Can grow large or become small at will. 6. Can, at times, vanish and become unknown. And 7. Can appear at will in different forms. The problem which the vampire's adversaries must overcome is how to deal successfully with all these obstacles. They all make a pact to work together in order to see how the general powers arrayed against us can be controlled and to consider the limitations of the vampire. Van Helsing points out that the vampire has been known in all lands all over the world. From the world's information about vampires, it is known that 1. The vampire cannot die due to the passing of time. 2. The vampire flourishes on the blood of human beings. 3. The vampire grows younger after feeding on blood. 4. Its physical strength and vital faculties are refreshed by blood. 5. It cannot survive without blood. 6. It can survive for great lengths of time without any nourishment. 7. It throws no shadow. 8. It makes no reflection in a mirror. 9. It has the strength of many. 10. It can control wild packs of wolves and can become a wolf, as the Count did when his ship arrived at Whitby. I didn't know that about vampires can just be wolves. Because then then a werewolf is like, I'm burdened with this once a month. Dracula's out here like, I'll be a wolf whenever I want. The vampire can transform itself into a bat. It can appear in a mist, which itself can create. 13. The vampire can travel on moonlight rays as elemental dust. That's pretty cool. 14. It can become so small and transparent that it can pass through the tiniest crevices. And 15. It can see perfectly in the dark. That's not like creepy. It's just nice to have. Its limitations are as follows. 1. These lists. It cannot enter a household unless it is summoned first. 2. Its power ceases at daylight. 3. In whatever form it is when daylight comes, it will remain in that form until sunset. 4. The vampire must always return to the unhallowed earth of its coffin, which restores its strength. This, of course, is the purpose of the 50 cases of earth. 5. Garlic is abhorrent to a vampire. 6. The crucifix, holy water, and holy wafers, the host, are anathemas. 7. It is rendered inactive if a wild rose is placed over it. I didn't know that one. And 8. Death occurs when a wooden stake is driven through the heart, the head cut off, and the garlic stuffed in the mouth. That's what we're about to do with this book. Put a stake in it, a wooden stake in it. Stuff the garlic through it, drive the steak, prepare it, get a nice garnish, maybe some sides. As Van Helsing concludes his lecture, Quincy Morris leaves the room and a shot is heard outside. Morris explains that he saw a bat and fired at it. On October 1st, early in the morning, Dr. Seward records that as they were about to leave the asylum, he received an urgent message from Renfield. The others asked if they may attend the meeting with Renfield, and they are astonished at the brilliance and lucidity of Renfield's plea to be released immediately. His scholarly logic and perfect elocution are that of a totally sane man. His request is denied. I'd hope so. Somebody who's nuts is all of a sudden like, nah, I'm fine. That's like double down crazy. In chapter 19, in his journal, Jonathan Harker records that Seward believes Renfield's erratic behavior to be directly influenced by the immediate proximity of Count Dracula. Later, as they are about to enter Dracula's Carfax, the Carfax thing is still going to get me. Carfax residence, Van Helsing distributes objects will protect them, each of them from the vampire. The house, they discover, is musty, dusty, and malodorous. Malodorous. Bad smell. They immediately search out the chapel, and, to their horror, they can find only 29 of the original 50 boxes of earth. Suddenly, the chapel is filled by a mass of rats. Oy. Towards noon, Seward records that Van Helsing is deeply fascinated by Renfield. On the same day, Mina feels strange to be left out of Jonathan's confidence, because she has no idea what happened last night, but she does remember that just before falling asleep, she heard unusual sounds and noises outside her window, and she felt as if she were in the grip of a strange lethargy. She thought that she saw a poor man with some passionate entreaty on his part, who wandered inside. She put on her clothes, but she must have fallen asleep or gone into a trance accompanied by strange dreams. When she awakened, she noticed that the window of her bedroom was open, and she was certain that she closed it before she went to sleep. Things became confused in her mind, but she recalls seeing 2 red eyes, which alarmed her extremely. On the 2nd of October, she records that she slept but felt very weak that day and asked for an opiate to help her sleep. The chapter closes as Mina feels sleep coming upon her. Oh, done. Commentary. Why not? We got time. Chapter 17 is the first time in the novel when all the protagonists are finally together. These 6 people, Mina, Jonathan, Dr. Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, Lord Godalming, Arthur, and Quincy Morris, will confront the evil represented by Count Dracula. They must undertake the task themselves since no authority or outsider would possibly believe their story. Excuse me. These 6 people, of course, have positive proof of the existence of vampires. In fact, Jonathan feels rejuvenated in health now that he is confronting the evil Count head-on. Stoker is dependent on the tradition that only a few people are privy to information which exposes them to the dangerous forces of the supernatural, thus isolating them from the general populace. This is a standard device of many a thriller and gothic romance. So, he's a hack. Chapter 18 is a key chapter of the novel because for the first time Stoker defines the vampire and its supernatural powers, strengths, and the means by which the vampire can be entrapped. In all subsequent stories concerning vampires or Dracula himself, Stoker's parameters have been used. The garlic, the crucifix, the wooden stake, the holy wafers, etc. This chapter then defines the very essence of what constitutes vampire literature. Other authors may vary slightly or redefine these parameters, but the more traditional material concerning vampires is presented here. Ah, okay. So this is that's the rule book for how vampires. We just made them up, all the rules about vampires. The later portions of Chapter 19 present us with the first clue, however slight, that Mina Harker is to become the vampire's next victim. It is not by accident that he chooses Mina as his next victim. She is the wife of Jonathan Harker, whom the vampire encountered in Transylvania, and she was the closest friend of his last victim, Lucy Westenra. It is interesting that we are made aware of the Count's visit by the impressionistic writing of Mina herself. For example, she records things in her journal which she does not fully understand or associate with vampirism. But the reader, through dramatic irony, is fully aware of what is transpiring. There is a curious ambiguity presented in this chapter as to how the vampire gains entrance to Mina's room. Recall that Van Helsing stated that vampires cannot enter a place without being first invited. The reader, at this point, does not have any idea as to how the vampire entered the room, unless it was because of the actions of Mina herself. Chapters 20 to 23. Summary. Jonathan, through his persistent investigations, discovers the whereabouts of 12 more of the boxes of earth. 2 groups of 6 were deposited at 2 different places in London. Jonathan assumes that it is the Count's plan to scatter the boxes throughout all of London. We should recall that there were 29 boxes in the chapel, and, added to the 12 which Jonathan recovered, they now have accounted for 41 of the original 50 boxes. On the evening of October 2nd, Jonathan receives a note which informs him of the whereabouts of the remaining 9 boxes. He also notes that Mina is lethargic and pale, but he puts it out of his mind. We still get some condition of somebody's looks. That evening, all of the men meet to determine the course of action for retrieving the remaining 9 boxes. Once again, Jonathan notes that Mina is very tired and pale. Dr. Seward notes again that Renfield is remarkably lucid, and, what is more, that Renfield seems to be a literate and learned man. Renfield scoffs at the notion of collecting flies and spiders. Later, however, Renfield reverts to his old ways. That night, Seward orders an attendant to stand guard outside Renfield's cell to note any fuck, man, I know this word and I'm just not, it's on a line break and it's not registering with me. Aberrant, fucking weird behavior. Later that night, there's a scream from Renfield's cell. Upon rushing to investigate, Seward discovers that Renfield has been seriously hurt. His face has been brutally beaten and there's a pool of blood on the cell floor, and his back is apparently broken. Damn. Seward knows Renfield himself could not have administered the wounds to his own face, especially with his back broken. Dr. Van Helsing arrives and they determine that Renfield is slipping fast. Thus, they decide to operate immediately. Renfield, realizing he is dying, tells them in an agony of despair what happened. Apparently, without identifying who it was, he says that he came up to the window in the mist, but he was solid then. I wouldn't ask him to come in. He maintains that it was he who used to send the flies and spiders and the rats and dogs, promising that he would give Renfield everything that lives, all red blood with years of life in it. Renfield refers to him as Lord and Master. Last night, Renfield says he slid through the window. Yes, I still really on that. I'm sorry. That's not professional. He slid through the window. This sounds like Dom DeLuise describing Captain Chaos from Cannonball Run. I just read a fictionalized book of Cannonball Run. Read the script. I'll do all the characters, although that'll get you canceled. Renfield then says that after Mrs. Harker came to see him, he knew she wasn't the same, and he knew that he had been taking the life out of her. Renfield tried to attack him, but he was burned, and his strength became like water. Van Helsing realized that he is here and we know his purpose. They rushed to Mina's door immediately, leaving Renfield, and begin to arm themselves against the vampire. Van Helsing tries to open the door, which is locked. And when they finally break the door down, the sight which greets them is appalling. Jonathan Harker is lying unconscious on the bed, and kneeling on the edge of the bed is the white-clad Mina. Beside her is a tall, thin man clad in black, Count Dracula himself. His right hand is behind Mina's head, and he is forcing her to suck the blood from a cut in his bare chest. This is getting a little erotic. When the Count raises his head to greet them, his eyes are blood red, his nostrils white, and they see white, sharp teeth behind the full lips of the blood-dripping mouth, clamped together like those of a wild beast. The Count begins to attack them, but is repelled by the sacred wafer which is wielded as a weapon by Van Helsing. The lights go out, and when they come on again, they see nothing but a faint vapor escaping under the door. Suddenly, Mina Harker recovers and emits an ear-piercing scream filled with despair and disgust. Her face is ghastly from the blood which smeared her lips and cheeks and chin. From her throat trickles a thin stream of blood. They have difficulty awakening Jonathan, and soon all traces of the vampire are lost. Mina feels unclean and untouchable. Yeah, bitch, you're covered in blood. Lord Godalming examines the house and discovers that the Count has apparently destroyed all of their records and that Renfield is dead. In spite of the horror that the story might cause, they ask Mina to recount the entire episode as best she can remember it. She recalls the first time she saw the thin, black-clad man with the strange teeth when Lucy was alive, and how he subsequently came to her in her room and placed his reeking lips upon her throat. Mina would swoon and not know how long Dracula was overpowering her. He told her, "You are now to me flesh of my flesh. When my brain says come, you shall come." With that, he opened his shirt, and with his sharp nail, he cut himself across his breast and pressed Mina's mouth to the wound so that she either had to suffocate or drink the blood. That's not how that works. In chapter 22, Jonathan Harker states that he feels compelled to either write in his journal or go mad after hearing Mina's story. Jonathan wants to stay with his wife, but since it is daylight, he knows there's no danger to her. They go to Carfax and sterilize all of the boxes by placing a holy wafer within each of them. They then find a way to enter into the Count's most recent abode in Piccadilly, a prominent London square. Before they leave the asylum, they make sure that Mina is appropriately armed. As Van Helsing touches her forehead with a sacred wafer, Mina lets out a fearful scream because the wafer has seared and burned her forehead. Mina realizes that she is unclean and pleads with the men to kill her if she becomes a vampire. Too late! Dracula's house in Piccadilly is as malodorous. Sounds like it sounds good, but it smells bad. It doesn't sound good. Malodorous as the one at Carfax. Expecting to find 9 boxes of earth, they're astonished to find only 8 boxes. Oh no. They do find keys to all of the other houses belonging to the Count, however, and then Quincy and Lord Godalming go off to destroy the boxes of earth in those houses. Chapter 23 begins with Van Helsing, Harker, and Seward waiting for the return of Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris. Van Helsing, in an attempt to draw Jonathan's mind from Mina's condition, informs them of his resolution that Dracula must be killed because, he says, Dracula is expanding his circle of power in order to harm innocent people. He cites Dracula using Renfield to gain access to Mina. While waiting, they received a note from Mina informing them that Dracula has left Carfax and is heading south, presumably to spend the evening in one of his other houses. Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris return with the news that they have sterilized Dracula's remaining boxes, and Van Helsing suddenly realizes that Dracula will be forced to come to the house at Piccadilly soon. A short time later, they hear a key inserted into the door with a gigantic panther-like leap. Count Dracula enters and eludes their ambush. Through his diabolical quickness, the Count dodges their attempts to kill him, yet, with a powerful thrust of a knife, Jonathan manages to rip open the Count's vestments, scattering banknotes and gold. As they corner the Count, he suddenly dodges away from them. Then he retrieves a handful of money from the floor and throws himself out a window. What does Dracula need money for? Like, you already can sneak into places, and you're like it's like you have a conscience. Just steal stuff. And you can't be out in the daytime, so you're not even have to worry about like robbing somebody, getting caught and put in prison because you only exist at night. As he flees, he taunts the men, reminding them that his revenge has just begun. All of them return to Seward's house where Mina is awaiting them. Before they retire, Van Helsing prepares Mina's room against the vampire's entry. In Jonathan Harker's journal, early on in the morning of the 4th of October, I gotta get one big yeah, doggy. Alright, hopefully that holds it off. In Jonathan Harker's journal, early on the morning of the 4th of October, he records how Mina asked him to call Van Helsing in order to hypnotize her. Under hypnosis, Mina is able to enter into the spirit of Dracula, and she becomes aware of flapping sails, the lapping of water, and the creaking of an anchor chain. Wait, okay. So she can be hypnotized and then become Dracula? He now understands why Dracula so desperately needed to retrieve the gold coins. He needed ready cash to pay for his passage out of the country. Just be a bat and hang out on a boat. Once again, they all renew their pledge to follow Dracula and destroy him. Commentary. The two central incidents in these chapters involve Mina's encounter with Dracula and her coming under his influence. Evil influence. Second, these chapters are also concerned with the discovery and sterilization of the 50 boxes of earth which Dracula brought with him. Since we earlier heard that a vampire can only enter an establishment if invited, we are first surprised that he has been able to enter Mina's room. We are inclined to wonder if she invited him in. Later, however, we learn that Dracula has used the zoophagous patient Renfield to invite Dracula into the house. It is now clear why Stoker has been using the patient in the novel and also why all the principal characters are visitors in Seward's house. Later, Van Helsing uses the fate of Renfield to prove that Dracula is expanding his sphere of influence and is using innocent people to accomplish his aims. Therefore, Dracula must be searched out and destroyed. It becomes clear in these chapters that Dracula has some kind of mind control over his victims. Yeah, man, he's Dracula. That is, he can induce them to open windows, for example, in order to let him into the home. Evidently, Stoker was interested in hypnosis or animal magnetism, since Van Helsing, through hypnotizing Mina, is able to learn of Dracula's whereabouts. It just seems pretty convenient as a tool, I'll say. Dracula, too, can hypnotize, and indeed, he is an individual of great personal magnetism. It is in these chapters that we learn that Stoker was, in fact, creating a Gothic villain, which would be similar to many Gothic villains in earlier literature. Among other things, Count Dracula is a member of the corrupt aristocracy. The Gothic villain aristocrat was probably derived from Richardson's novels Pamela and Clarissa. Man, those troublemakers. In which the villain's persecution of the innocent maiden dramatized for a middle-class audience the exaggerated nature of the class struggle. It is important for the reader to understand the dramatic and philosophical importance of the villain's aristocratic heritage. If Dracula were a peasant, the story would hardly be as dramatic. True. Chapters 24 and 25. Van Helsing thinks that Jonathan Harker should stay in England with his wife, since he now knows that Dracula is returning to Transylvania. Jonathan Harker expresses in his journal how happy Mina is that Dracula is returning to Transylvania. When Harker looks at the terrible mark on Mina's forehead, a sign of the evil infection that was caused by Dracula's blood, he's reminded of the reality of the vampire. In her journal, Mina Harker records the various reports concerning Dracula's departure. In the investigations, it was discovered that Dracula boarded a ship headed for Varna, a seaport on the Black Sea, near the mouth of the Danube River, same place he had left from 3 months earlier. Evidently, Van Helsing has deduced the reason why Dracula came to England. Dracula's own country is so barren of people that he came to England, a place where life is rich and flourishing. He is now returning to his native soil to escape discovery. Seward recalls his fear concerning Mina Harker, and in a short time Van Helsing confirms his views. Mina is changing. Characteristics of the vampire are beginning to show in her face. That is, her teeth are longer and her eyes are colder. He now fears that the Count could, by hypnosis, even over long distances, discover their plans. So they must keep Mina ignorant of their plans so that the Count cannot discover the whereabouts through her. Yep, it's a problem hanging out with a psychic. You can't tell them anything. They determine how long it will take the ship to reach Varna by sea, and they set a date for their own departure so that they will be in Varna before Count Dracula arrives. Then Mina surprises them by telling them that she should accompany them on their journey, since through hypnotizing her, they can discover the whereabouts and intentions of Count Dracula. Everyone agrees with her, so it is settled. Mina will accompany them. Chapter 25 begins with Seward's journal, written on the evening of October 11th. While Mina Harker is pleased that they are going to take her with them, she makes them repeat their promise to kill her if she's ever so totally changed into a vampire form that they cannot save her. Well, yeah, man, that's like the plan. All of them swear to do so, and Seward is pleased that the word euthanasia exists. Alright. Because it euphemistically disguises the nature of her request. Mina makes one seemingly unusual request. In case she has to be killed, she would like to hear the burial service read to her immediately this very night. Dark. 4 days later, on the 15th of October, 6 people arrive at Varna via the Orient Express. And when they arrive, they place Mina under hypnosis, during which she reports that she still senses the lapping of water against the ship. Van Helsing expresses his desire for them to board the ship as soon as it arrives at Varna. If they can board the ship before Dracula's coffin is removed, they will have him trapped. For one of the limitations of vampires is that they cannot cross running water. But put that in the whole list of things you just told me about what they can and can't do. Dracula is not Jesus. Okay. On the 17th, Jonathan notes in his journal that Van Helsing has secured admittance for the group to board Dracula's ship as soon as it arrives, and that they may more easily carry out the extermination of the vampire. Gotta take a minute for with my eyes. I haven't stared at a thing in a while. A week later, they receive a telegram from London reporting that the ship was sighted at the Dardanelles. Dr. Seward therefore assumes that it will arrive the next day. While waiting, Dr. Seward and Van Helsing are concerned about Mina's lethargy and her general state of weakness. They wait for 2 days and still the ship does not arrive. On the 28th of October, they receive a telegram reporting that the ship has arrived at the port of Galatz, a city on the coast near Varna. Van Helsing offers a theory that when Mina was weak, the Count had pulled her spirit to him. Now the Count knows of their presence, as well as their efforts to trap him and exterminate him. At present, however, Mina is feeling free and healthy, and she and Van Helsing use their knowledge of criminology to deduce that the Count is a criminal type. Hence, he will act as a criminal, and therefore his main purpose will be to escape his pursuers. You're just putting this together now, that the Dracula's a bad guy and he's not going to play by the rules? The guy that drinks blood and turns into bats and wolves isn't going to go by the law? Fuck out of here. Commentary. I'd love to hear some. It is only now, this late in the novel, that we learn the real reason why Dracula has come to England. His country is barren of peoples, and England is teeming with a number of new victims. Nothing good to eat back in Transylvania. Since Count Dracula brought with him 50 boxes of earth, one can assume that he was intending to stay in England quite some time. The central incident of these chapters was the infection of Mina. She has a mark on her forehead, a sign that she is unclean, that she's infected with vampirism. Her teeth have grown noticeably longer and her eyes have grown colder. We're also led to believe, in the course of these chapters, that the pursuers are in perfect control because they remember to arm themselves with all kinds of weapons. Even Winchesters for the wolves. That's a good question. If Dracula no, he can summon wolves. In theory, they will be able to track down Dracula's destination as far as Varna. However, in the next chapter, we discover that the Count deliberately misled them, and that instead of Varna, he had his box of earth sent on to Galatz, thus bypassing the awaiting pursuers. Dracula, he's sneaky. The idea of hypnosis is continued through these chapters, as well as in the 2 remaining chapters, in order to track down Dracula, and once again, Mina extracts a promise that if she begins to change into a vampire, she wants to be killed. In preparation, she has the church burial service read to her. The notion of euthanasia would have been a shocking notion to Victorian readers. Oh, okay. Man, nobody knew about that one back then. Okay, assisted self-checkout. Chapters 26 and 27, and note, we're around in the corner, baby. Here we come. Summary. On the 29th day of October, what is that? That's in 2 days from now, for this day. On the 29th day of October, Dr. Seward records that Mina, under hypnosis, can hear and distinguish very little, and that the things which she does hear, such as the lowing of cattle, indicate that Dracula's coffin is now being moved upriver. Jonathan Harker records on October 30th that the captain of the ship which brought Dracula told of the unusual journey which they made from London to Galatz. That is, many of the Romanians on board the ship wanted him to throw the box overboard, but the captain felt obligated to deliver the box to the person to whom it was assigned. We find out then that one Emanuel Hildesheim received the box, and that the box was given to a Slavic. Petrov Skinsky. Skinsky was found dead in a churchyard, his throat apparently torn open by some wild animal. Classic. And that same day, Mina, having read all of the journal entries, and after consulting maps for waterways and roads, concludes that the Count would have had to take the river to Sirith, which is then joined into the Britsriza, which then leads them to the Borgo Pass, where Jonathan Harker stopped at the beginning of the novel. Bringing it back around. I chose to separate and head for the pass. Van Helsing and Mina by train, Lord Godalming and Jonathan Harker by a steamboat. Quincy Morris and Seward by horseback. Harker and Godalming, in questioning various captains of other boats along the river, hear of a large launch with a double crew traveling ahead of them. They keep up the pursuit during the first 3 days of November. Meanwhile, Mina and Van Helsing arrive at Veresti on the 31st of October, where Van Helsing hires a horse and carriage for the last 70 miles of the journey. Chapter 27 begins with a continuation of Mina Harker's journal. She records that she and Van Helsing traveled all day by carriage on the 1st of November. She remarks that she thinks the countryside is beautiful, yet the people are very, very superstitious. In one house with two of them stop, a woman noticed the red mark on Mina's forehead and crossed herself and pointed 2 fingers at Mina to keep off the evil eye. I got that from, I got the evil eye. Took a Greek girl to prom. Her grandmother gave me the evil eye. I don't know if I told that on this show, that thing here yet. Yeah, I got cursed by an old Greek lady way back when. That evening, Van Helsing hypnotizes Mina, and they learn that Dracula is still on board ship. On the 2nd of November, they again travel all day towards the Borgo Pass, hoping to arrive on the morning of the 3rd of November. That's going to be a day this year, isn't it? They arrive at the Borgo Pass, and Van Helsing again hypnotizes Mina. They discover that the Count is still on board ship. After Mina awakens from the trance, she is full of energy and zeal, and she miraculously knows the way towards the Count's castle. She also knows the location of an unused side road, a road which is unmarked. They choose to take that path. That day, Mina sleeps considerably and seems incredibly weak and lethargic. It's always with the lethargy. When Van Helsing attempts to hypnotize her again, he discovers that he can no longer do it. He has lost his power to hypnotize. They spend the night in a wild forest east of the Borgo Pass, and Van Helsing builds a fire. Then, using a holy wafer, he places Mina in a protective circle. Later that night, the 3 female vampires which accosted Jonathan materialize near their campfire and tempt Van Helsing with their teeming sexuality. They also tempt Mina to come with them. Hey, why not? You're a vampire. You're a swinger. The horses evidently die of terror. That's a bummer. And Van Helsing's only weapon against the 3 female vampires is the fire and the holy wafer. At dawn, the sunlight drives away the 3 female vampires. On the afternoon of the 5th of November, Van Helsing and Mina arrive by foot at Count Dracula's castle. Using a heavy blacksmith's hammer, Van Helsing knocks at the castle door off its hinges and enters Dracula's Demesnes. Demesnes. Domicile. Recalling the description on Jonathan's journal, Van Helsing finds his way to the old chapel where Dracula lies during his non-active times. In his search of the old chapel, Van Helsing discovers the 3 graves of the 3 female vampires, those naughty ones. He performs a purification ritual and puts an end to the female vampires. The female vampires' voluptuous beauty dissolves into dust upon the driving of a stake through their hearts. Van Helsing then finds a large tomb, more lordly than all the rest, upon which is one word: Dracula. Van Helsing crushes a holy wafer and lays it within the tomb, and so vanished him from it, undead forever. Before he leaves the castle, Van Helsing places holy material around the entrance that the Count could never enter the castle again. The novel ends with a passage from Mina Harker's journal, an entry that begins in the late afternoon of the 6th of November, a date some 6 months since the novel began. Mina and Van Helsing are on foot, traveling east in the midst of a heavy snowfall. The howling of wolves seems perilously close. On a high mountain road, utilizing his field glasses, Van Helsing notices in the distance a group of men. They seem to be gypsies around a cart. Van Helsing knows instinctively that the cart is carrying a box of unholy dirt containing the Count, and that they must reach the box before sunset, which is quickly approaching. The 2 men who are riding towards the north, Van Helsing assumes must be Quincy Morris and Dr. Seward. This would mean that from the other direction, Jonathan and Lord Godalming must not be far away. Simultaneously, The 6 people converge on the wagon and the gypsies. The sun continues to set. Oh, it's getting tense. Jonathan and Lord Godalming stop the gypsies by using their Winchesters, just as Morris and Seward arrive wielding their guns. With an almost superhuman effort, Jonathan eludes the defenders, leaps upon the cart, and throws the box to the ground. Quincy, wielding his knife, slashes his way through the gypsies and gains access to the box, but not before he is stabbed by one of the gypsies. Regardless of the wounds, Quincy, along with Jonathan, rips the lid from the box. Inside is the dreaded Count Dracula, covered with the unholy dirt which has been jostled all over him. Old Dracula jostled in dirt. As the 6 of them stare into the coffin, Dracula's eyes look toward the setting sun, and the look of hate in them turn to triumph. Then, at the very last moment of sunlight, Jonathan, wielding a great knife, chops off Count Dracula's head, while Quincy Morris's bowie knife plunges into the Count's heart. And almost in the drawing of a breath, writes Mina, the whole body crumbled into dust and passed from sight. Mina noticed that even at the moment of death, with such a horrid face and image, she sees a look of peace. The gypsies, seeing the body disintegrate, withdraw in abject fright. Sadly, Quincy Morris has been fatally wounded. Before he dies, however, he is able to note that the curse on Mina's forehead is gone. Quincy dies a gallant gentleman. In a note attached to the end of the novel, reportedly from Jonathan Harker, we learn that it is 7 years later. He and Mina have a son who they name Quincy. That's sweet. Lord Godalming and Dr. Stewart are both happily married. I'm thinking together, I don't know. In a final note of irony, Jonathan reports that all of the material of which the record is made, there's hardly one authentic document. The only remaining notes are those which have been transcribed on typewriter. Therefore, we could hardly ask anyone to accept these as proofs of so wild a story. Commentary. The closing chapters of the novel suggest a type of chase novel, with the good guys chasing the evil person, who seems to be able to constantly elude them. Even at the end of the novel, it seems as though the Count will escape into the sinking sunset before the rituals can be performed upon him. Actually, for most readers, the last half of the novel becomes somewhat long and drawn out. Fucking no shit. But this novel was written at the end of the Victorian period, when the reading public expected novels to last a long time. I'm glad that I'm being, that my case is being supported here. The killing of Dracula, of course, represents the social victory of middle-class morality over the corrupt morality of the aristocracy. The latent virtue of the Count is revealed in Mina's account, however, for as the Count is freed from the influence of the vampire form, his face contains a look of peace. That the events really happened is now questioned by the final note, which announces that all the original documents have been lost, and what we have read has been no more than the typewritten, transcribed notes of the originals. Notes which cannot be used as absolute proof of the horrible things that have transpired. In spite of the flaws of this novel, it has been an unlimited source of stories, plays, novels, and movies, as well as a source for assorted psychological theories. This novel is an example of a type of literature in which the germ or kernel idea far transcends the execution. Well, could have been doing this the whole time. I doubt anybody's stuck with me. If you have, thank you. Why? We're going to pick a shorter, more interesting choice for the next public domain, if there's a world where that happens, or if we're all just collecting lead to melt down for homemade muskets. Who knows what's going to happen in the next couple weeks. Anyway, happy Halloween. Get out and vote. Give those charities. And Mike, play me out.